Late in the last century, among 5 of the world's great living poets, there formed a bond of friendship that spanned continents and traversed decades among those whose formidable task it was to sing in dark times. They worked in Creole, English, Polish, Russian, and Spanish, and collectively gave to the world a lyric art commensurate with the age. The 5 poets traveled, corresponded, and read together, and each in their turn was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature. The group included Joseph Brodsky, Seamus Heaney, Czesław Miłosz, Octavio Paz, and the poet we wish were here with us tonight, Derek Walcott. He was born in 1930 in the town of Castries in St. Lucia, one of the Windward Islands in the Lesser Antilles, and he grew up writing Greek-styled epics in unrhymed pentameters modeled after Kingsley's myth of Perseus. When he was young, he spent the summer at a country hotel of Gras Augustin. There, while walking on a hill, he had a vision, and he was brought to tears for the beauty of the world and felt changed. He wrote of this experience in a poem titled 1944, published when he was 14 years old. He grew into an Adamic poet whose gift it was to write a world into being, the new world of many races, languages, and cultures, and within him, a fusion of the individual and the historical took place. And he understood this not as tradition, lineage, and sequence, but a great flowing and cyclical whirl. He writes against the burden of slavery, racism, and violent conquest with a deep knowledge of the classics and the whole of literature in English, supported by a mastery of form, cadence, rhythm, the sound and weight of inflected syllables, metaphorical structures, vivid imagery, deep resonance, and most of all, the density and weight of the poetic line. Early on, the poet Robert Graves proclaimed, "Derek Walcott handles English with a closer understanding of its inner magic than most, if not any, of his English-born contemporaries." Early on, he also wrote plays and created a theater in Port of Spain, Trinidad, that is to say, created for the West Indies an experience of theater of its own. He also mastered landscape painting in watercolor, a difficult art not only of painting, but of anticipating water's movements on paper. All of this he did from the beginning and throughout his life, waking each day at dawn to work. His friend Joseph Brodsky said of this, "For almost 40 years, his throbbing and relentless lines kept arriving in the English language like tidal waves, coagulating into an archipelago of poems without which the map of modern literature would effectively match wallpaper." He gives us more than himself or a world. He gives us a sense of infinity embodied in the language. This sense of mathematical infinity is echoed in Walcott's own reflection. Walcott says, "The anguish of every art is that it is continually groping to escape itself. Van Gogh would have plastered thick sunlight onto his Provence canvases instead of pure paint if he could." Language, especially in the form of poetry, gropes for an algebraic precision in which letters have the unchanging rigidity of numbers. However this might be so, Walcott also believes that poetry begins in induced chaos, in accident as illumination, error as truth, typographical mistakes as revelation. Poetry does not begin in self-conscious intention. Walcott once quipped, "I cannot think because I refuse to, unlike Descartes. I have always put Descartes behind the horse, and the horse is Pegasus." Walcott's exemplary mastery and dedication to poetry, the embodiment of human consciousness in lyric art, is unsurpassed in our time. As the great West Indian intellectual C.L.R. James once proclaimed, "We have produced a poet, an authentic, poetry-centered poet. Whatever else we do or do not do, that is something. For centuries we used the language and literature of the English people. Now we are adding to it. Let no one underestimate what this means to them, to us, and other English language-speaking peoples." It is my honor to announce, on behalf of the trustees of the Griffin Prize, the Lifetime Recognition Award in Poetry for 2015 to the poet of St. Lucia, the West Indies, and the world, Derek Walcott. Please join me in honoring him.
This is a poem called The Lost Empire from Derek Walcott's recent volume, White Egrets. In the second half of the poem, this small place he's talking about is St. Lucia, where he lives. And in the last lines, he refers to Kavanagh, who's the Irish poet Patrick Kavanagh, who in some poems and essays exalted the parish or the small place over the globe or the cosmopolitan. So this poem is called The Lost Empire. And then there was no more empire all of a sudden. Its victories were air, its dominations dirt. Burma, Canada, Egypt, Africa, India, the Sudan. The map that had seeped its stain on a schoolboy's shirt like red ink on a blotter. Battles, long sieges. Dhows and feluccas, hill stations, outposts, flags fluttering down in the dusk. Their golden aegis went out with the sun, the last gleam on a great crag with tiger-eyed turbaned Sikhs, pennons of the Raj, to a sobbing bugle. I see it all come about again, the tasseled cortege, the clop of the tossing team with funeral pom-poms, the sergeant major's shout, the stamp of boots, then the volley. There is no greater theme than this chasm-deep surrendering of power, the whited eyes and robes of surrendering hordes, red tunics and the great names, Sindh, Turkestan, Cawnpur, dust dervishes, and the Saharan silence afterwards. Part 2. A dragonfly's biplane settles, and there on the map the archipelago looks as if a continent fell and scattered into fragments, from Pointe du Cap to Moule aux Chic, Bois Cano, L'Oreal Canals, Canoe Woods, Spicy Laurel. The wind-churned trees echo the African crests. At night the stars are far fishermen's fires, not glittering cities, Genoa, Milan, London, Madrid, Paris, but crab hunters' torches. This small place produces nothing but beauty. The wind-warped trees, the breakers on the Dennery cliffs, and the wild light that loosens a galloping mare on the plain of Vieux-Fort makes us merely receiving vessels of each day's grace. Light simplifies us, whatever our race or gifts. I'm content as Kavanagh with his few acres, for my heart to be torn to shreds like the sea's lace, to see how its wings catch colour when a gull lifts.
Derek Walcott became, by necessity, a voice of a place, a nation, as in that great poem of his, The Schooner Flight, either I'm nobody or I'm a nation. He accepted a public role, but there is that great range in him from the public voice to the private one, the voice of solitude, where his poems got written, as in this small poem. Love after love. The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, sit here, eat. You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit. Feast on your life.